So welcome everyone to this webcast on the data center migration. I know there's lots of questions and I know emails have gone out, so we'll do our best to answer all those questions and provide as much detail as we can. And if there's anything we missed or anything that we need to follow up on, we certainly will. And the community, the wiki, and upcoming webcasts and office hours will be helping on that as well. So quickly to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Rich Graves. I'm the product manager at ServiceAide. I was previously with CA Technologies as part of the cloud service management team. So I've been with cloud service management now for, gosh, about 4 or 5 years. And Persona is the same. We've been working on cloud service management for many years now with CA and ServiceAide. So a few quick updates, I think, before we talk about the migration itself. First is Goldfinch. So Goldfinch is the latest release being rolled out right now. It is in production now in the European data center and the Australian data center. It's in staging in the Americas and the North America-based data center, and will go into production this weekend. So everyone should at least have seen the new features and played around with it in staging at this point. If you do run into any issues, please do open those up with the support team at support.ca.com as soon as you possibly can. The more lead time we have, if you run into a defect or a configuration issue, the better chance we have of getting it resolved before production. So Goldfinch had sort of 3 areas of focus. The new user or improved user experience on using the Elasticsearch. So this is the global search. It's still labeled as beta, and I know there's a few questions in the community recently at that. We are labeling it as beta for a time period until we feel like it's is a full replacement for the existing search that's there. So you can toggle it on or off. We want you to feel comfortable with it before we make the big change of getting rid of the old functionality. So it's much better improving performance of searches and results, as well as it now supports all the languages that we support out of the box in the product. Also, we have some archival changes coming up and some improvements to the advanced reporting domain and how we handle multiple domains. On the analyst productivity side, a lot of improvements to Scratchpad and attachments and how attachments are used on tickets. And lastly, Microsoft Edge browser support for users who are on Windows 10 and above. The mobile app, the new analyst mobile app we'll talk about in a little bit, that comes out in February. We have done some usability testing and got a lot of good feedback, but that will come in February. So the new mobile app, the first few releases will be completely focused on agents or analysts. So people that manage tickets, really the licensed users inside CSM. So it'll be able to manage a queue of tickets, take actions on tickets, view details of tickets. So we really want it to be a compelling interface that makes it simple and fast for those users to interact with the application on their mobile device, iOS and Android devices. So that's something that will come out at the end of February. And I think one of the big benefits of having it on new technology is that we will be doing new releases about every month on the mobile app. So we want to show consistent, new features on the mobile app. It won't do everything in the first release. It's not, things like approvals and push notifications will be coming later. So those are things that we'll be adding month to month. So you'll see a lot of nice improvements in the mobile app. The last thing I wanted to show before we jump into the data center migration is really the sort of what's coming, sort of the release cadence of when you can expect new releases. So the timeline here, Goldfish coming out now in January, the new mobile app next month. Horseshoe is what we're calling this data center migration. So we call it a release because that's how we manage things and use our agile sprints and stories are related to that. It's not a functional release, and we'll talk more about that, but that will come out starting now and go through the end of March. The next functional release, feature release, will come in May, known as Ivory, followed by another release, Jasmine, in August, and then another release in November. So hitting the quarterly releases for the core application, and then mobile, again, will come every single month. So that should give you an idea of what's coming from a larger time frame perspective. But let's now shift into into the migration, I think, which is the key part of this presentation today. So I think a couple of key questions that I want to answer up front is, why are we doing this migration? I think the short and simple answer is, Cloud Service Management is now part of ServiceAide, so we need to move out of the CA data centers and move to ServiceAide managed environments. Legally, CA and ServiceAide are two different companies, so we need to do that transition. So we are moving to a cloud environment with ServiceAide. As part of this migration, it's a good opportunity for us to look at the architecture, improve things, look at the infrastructure, and improve things there as well. So the new environment will have new and an updated infrastructure. We believe we'll have better performance as well as elastic capacity. So the ability to really support growth in a much better way than we can today in the current data centers. The current data centers are private, traditional hosted data centers. So if we do need more infrastructure, like many of you know, it's a change order, a change request. You get a hard drive, you get new memory, someone installs it, and then you move forward from there. With a cloud environment, obviously those challenges don't exist. It's a matter of just tuning the application and being able to add capacity as we need to. With this migration, there's no functional changes. We're doing our best to follow good change management practices and adding new features or new functions in the tool while we're migrating to a new data center just presents more risk to the project, and certainly the goal is to make all of our customers successful and make this as painless as we possibly can as we move from one environment to another. All customers will move, so we are moving everyone in the current environments to the new environments. And the process begins at the end of this month and goes through late March. There's 6 different groups of customers, so we're moving groups of customers at a time so that we can pace the migration, make sure that we give customers the amount of attention they need to make sure that they're testing and understand the impact and that there's success and not just flipping a switch and doing everyone at once. So here's the 6 different groups that will be moving with the production target date on the right-hand side. So everyone should now have received an email communicating their target staging date and their target production date. If you have not received that email, it's likely because we had old email addresses or contacts that have moved on or not with your company. So that's something we'll need to take on a one-on-one basis. But the majority of customers, the overwhelming majority of customers, should have received emails essentially Monday and Tuesday communicating these dates. So we're starting now with some of our smaller environments and smaller customers and moving forward and going in these groups essentially from early February to the end of March. Okay. So as I mentioned, here's the high-level process, and this is a dramatic simplification of it, but I'll talk about it and expand on detail as I move forward. So you should have received a notification now. It's a standard email that talks about your environment, your staging target date, your production target date, and then the new URLs for your environment. So the way, once you have that notification, it'll give you some insight of the process. But what we will be doing is first taking a backup of your production environment, your current production environment, and migrating that to the new staging environment. So this gives you a sense of here is what your new production environment will look like with the new URL and the new data center. So that gives you plenty of time to validate that, number one, that your workflow processes and continue to work. I think that's the first thing you want to do is just test your workflow, make sure everything still looks good, that there's no hiccups in the migration of the data. And then next, start looking at the things that are impacted based on the URL change. That URL changing from sas.ca.com to csm1.serviceaide.com. That has impact on several different things, about 10 different things in total. So you think about Active Directory synchronization, well, that's dependent on the URL. Single sign-on, well, that's dependent on the URL. So all those things need to be examined. We provided a great list of detail that I'll go into in a minute about what's changing and how you need to react to these changes. And we give you time during this, staging period, this validation period, to review those. Many of these changes you can make in advance. Some you can at least test in staging and, have your run book that you're going to do when the production migration is done. So that's that validation period where we take a backup of your production environment and move it to the new staging environment. One important note, we are not moving your current staging environment to the new data center. We're focused on moving production because we want to give you your production environment as a test environment in staging, and then, eventually do the, approximately, 10 days later, do the production, migration again, essentially to the new production. So that's an important thing to note. If you do have anything in progress in staging, changes you're testing and playing around with, you want to probably put those into production as soon as you can if you're ready, or figure out a good plan to have those move forward later. So the production migration, so after this test period that you have, validation period, with your new staging environment, the production migration will then be done on a weekend during, off business hours, and move the data, again, take a backup of production, a new fresh backup, move it to the new data center, restore it, and then give you a notification of when you can test and make any of these post-production changes that, for example, like UIM integration, which you would not want to do in advance because you don't want to lose that integration alerts beforehand. Okay. A couple things to mention here is that your environment in the CA data center, the current environment, will be shut down when the production migration begins. So essentially deactivate it and not make it available. We keep it as a backup, as a rollback procedure from change management best practices to make sure that's available. But after the production migration, all of your employees, all of your users should be using the new URL to access the system. Okay. So I'd mentioned the migration notification email. So these went out essentially Monday and Tuesday. If you did not get this email, and this email contains your dates, your staging URL, your production URL, and an overview of the process, as well as a checklist that I'll talk about next. If you did not get this yet, we likely had bad email addresses and they bounced back. So please do reach out to Ken Loffman, who's referenced here on the presentation, his email address. And we'll show that again as a summary. And again, this presentation and webcast will be posted to the community if you don't get this info right now. So the letter goes through the details on the time frames, on the new URLs, a little bit about the process, and then the attachment to that email is the migration checklist. So the migration checklist highlights 10 areas of the product that are impacted by the URL change. So anything that's in the product, like if you think about communication templates when they're sent out, they have a link back to the product. Well, we'll handle that during the migration. The email addresses and different other things in the application, we'll handle all those. Anything that's in the application, we will make those changes during the migration as part of the migration script and procedure. The areas that are impacted that require your review are things outside the application. So integration points like Active Directory, single sign-on. If you have a redirect URL, if you're using, servicedesk.companyname.com, and that redirects to the CSM application login URL, well, those are things that you need to look at and review. There's 10 areas, as I mentioned in this checklist. They each go through, what's changing and why, and then the steps to make that change and fix it. Where is that URL file located? It's like a metadata file or an integration file or, opening up Active Directory and making changes. For some customers, not all of these are going to impact them. For if you're not using single sign-on or Active Directory sync, well, you don't need to do any changes in those areas. So for some customers, there's going to be a small number of changes they need to make, and other customers, there's going to be more. So the migration checklist has been emailed to you. It is also available on the wiki. So if you go to the wiki.ca.com/cloudsm, you can see under the reference section there is an article called Migration to ServiceAide Cloud, and you'll see that the article is there as well. What was sent out was a PDF, and the wiki article has the same detail just on the wiki. Okay. So I think a couple important things about assistance during the migration. So we are going to be setting up what we call migration office hours, because we know that not all of your questions are going to be answered today, because you're probably going to go back, look at the checklist, and say, well, I'm confused about this point, or what if I do this integration? What do I need to do? Starting next week, and we'll be posting all of these on the community, we'll be having office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And so we'll then essentially have where you can call in and just ask any questions. It'll be an open agenda, and we'll see how we can help you during that time period each Tuesday and Thursday to make sure that this is a seamless process and you feel comfortable. And if you have any questions, you can certainly raise them. If you do have any questions on dates, so if you saw your dates and you're confused about when it starts, when it ends, and what this means, and how long you have to test, please do reach out to Ken Laufman. And again, if you have not received a notification email yet, please reach out to Ken as well. If you have any technical questions, if you're confused about, how you change your AD Sync configuration, you can reach out to support as you normally would at support.ca.com. We're keeping all of Cloud Service Management support focused on and using the support.ca.com portal. We don't want to make too many changes at once. The data center changes enough. We don't want to touch support until after that change is done. So you can raise any technical questions as you normally would through support.ca.com. As always, the community and the wiki are out there as well, and we'll be putting more and more information there as we move forward. Okay. New URLs. So here are the new environments and the URLs that will be that are in your communications, but as well, different users are going to have a different production URL. But here's the new URLs. So production CSM1 and 2 and 3 .serviceaide.com. So we try to simplify the URL a bit and make that pretty easy, hopefully, for our customers. So as I mentioned, this is just highlighting those 10 items in the checklist. So the checklist document was emailed to everyone, as well as it's on the wiki site. So the 10 key areas that are impacted by us changing the URL from sm1.sas.ca.com to csm1.serviceaide.com. So by changing that, of course, the obvious changes. The production and staging login URLs change. So, whatever you type into the address bars is going to be different unless you're doing a redirect. And, of course, then the redirects need to be changed as well. The next two are really probably the most common integration points, Active Directory synchronization and single sign-on. So if you are using those, you do need to change those configurations. Active Directory you can do in advance. The benefit there is you can do that in advance. The sync obviously won't be syncing with the new production system until it's turned on, but you can do that setup in advance. And single sign-on you can certainly test and be prepared for in advance as well. And there's a new certificate that needs to be downloaded that you can do in advance. Inbound and outbound email domains. So if you know your email notifications that are sent out of the system, use the sas.ca.com domain today. That domain will change. So if you're doing forwarding emails, or if you're masking that email address somehow, you do need to take a look at those as you prepare for the migration. The next one, direct URLs and communication templates. This does not apply to a large percentage of our customers, but this is not the standard URLs that are automatically created by CSM and the communication templates. These are, if you're typing in your own custom, URL or a direct URL that you're typing in communication templates, those need to be changed because we can't, detect those and automatically know what you want to change them to. So if you have an email address, sending to, redirecting to another system or having a custom URL in there, you do need to review those and consider if those need to change. The CA UIM, or what was previously NIMSOFT Monitor integration, that needs to be updated. It's a small change to update the URL that you're pointing UIM at for the two integration points. Asset Discovery Manager. So if you're using Asset Discovery, which has an on-premise component to run the discovery, you do need to point that manager at CSM, the new production URL. This can all be done in advance, which is nice, so you can have that set up and ready. Of course, you won't be syncing assets until the production environment comes up and it has a good connection. Number 8, external integrations using web services. So if you do have external systems that are connecting to CSM using the SOAP web services, you do need to update those and essentially the login URL or the WSDL to be able to connect to it. Next is the mobile app login URL. So the mobile app is based on the login page. You have a URL that you enter to connect to the system. That does need to be updated for users to be able to log in effectively from the mobile app, the current mobile app. Last is data extracts for the small number of customers that are using data extracts. We will have a new SFTP site and a new username and password. So we'll be sending specific communications to customers on that with sharing the new, essentially, home for data extracts. Okay. So now I'm going to pass things over to Prasanna to walk through a demonstration of a couple of the, I think, most common changes. And while we're doing that, any questions on the phone while we're transitioning over to Prasanna? It's #6 if you want to unmute yourself. Okay.
Let me take the controls.
Hi, Richard.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hi, quick question. This is Tony from AIM. When you're talking about the links within the communication templates, if we have a link that references a ticket, for example, we have a link that says click here to access a ticket, which redirects to sm1.sas. Like, we're using the variable for the URL. Will we need to do any updates for all these links?
Are you using the token, the URL tokens which are there in the communication template? Then you don't require to, because the token would update that. In case if you are using SM1 in the communication template, then it would automatically update that.
Okay.
Only thing, in case if you are already using a redirected one, like servicedesk.companyname.com, something redirected, than sm1.sas.ca.com, then it will not be redirected. Otherwise, it will redirect.
Okay, because if I look at the email, the HTML would actually point to sm1.sas. So in that case, all these would have to be redone?
That would redirect it. That would get automatically redirected from the migration concept.
Oh, okay. So nothing on our end. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let me walk through a couple of things. For showing what the difference is between the two slices, what I have done is like I have an internal DevOps environment where we use one slice and moved over to the other slice. So if you could see the slice configuration, let me walk through some of the slice configuration. So between the two systems, this is the other environment. This is my cloud environment, a CSM trial SA, and then the other one is my local environment. If you see most of the configuration, we would retain them whenever we move that to the new domain. So see the other details, for example, this is the SQL Server and other details would change. But the slice token, which is used for your AD-Sync communication or any other information, even in the in-soft monitoring, you would use this slice token. So that would get retained the same thing. And then the single sign-on configuration, in case if there are any single sign-on configuration, so that would also get moved. For example, here you would see 3 configurations I have done. And so all those 3 configurations would get migrated to the new system. Let me show you parallel so that you would get the difference between the 2. So rest of the configuration, for example, inbound email, if you have configured any inbound emails, even that you would see that it would get moved over, but you would see that difference here. It's like it will be the CSM trial one. The domain, the name of the mailbox would retain the same. So the domain part, like here, it's like iDevOps Cloud itsmca.com would get modified to csmtrialsa.com. So that would automatically get updated. Only thing, in case of you have used some redirection in your mail exchange server, that you need to probably change that from the ca.com to the CA trial ServiceAide.com. Those changes need to be done. But anything configuration in the system, it would retain the same thing. Even the outbound email, you would see that would also get copied over, and the same configuration you would see them over in the new system too. The rest of the other configurations would get copied over to the system. So even the job triggers, you would have created any new job trigger or something configured, so those also would get copied over. No changes needs to be done manually for these slices in the system. So I think the system side, whatever is required for changes, it's been done, it's been taken care. I think for some of the configuration like AD Sync, let me go through what changes you would need. For AD Sync to work, mainly you would require to have the SI certificate, that's the certificate, HTTPS certificate. So that needs to be manually copied over. And so you would see here, this is a SI certificate that needs to be created using the SSL certificate from the domain. For that, probably what we can make it available is we will make it available once we have the system available, trialsa.com. So whatever the ServiceAide CSM1 ServiceAide.com, then you would be able to get to the screen where you would find the certificate. You can download that certificate and incorporate it. You might not be able to log in until you provision, until the complete information from your current system gets migrated. But you would get the certificate, whatever is required for you to start downloading and configuring the AD Sync part can be done. And just for demonstration purpose, other than the SI certificate, there is one more small change which is required in the sync property file. Already updated that over here. You would see the URL here. So this action URL, this also needs to be updated. So if you see the earlier one, you would see that with the iDevOps environment, and that needs to be changed to the CSM one. So this is a manual change which is required. So for the AD Sync configuration. So once you make this change and then the SI certificate updated, then you could see that AD Sync directly works. For example, like this. For testing purpose, I did the sync, and then you would say I just created a couple of more users, demo users, and other things. You would see them available in the system. So let me just log into the iDevOps environment and then show you the users here. So you would see that csm.local users which are there. Then they've just created a couple of new users for the testing purpose. Those are the demo users which are there here.
And Prasanna, while you're looking that up, just to highlight a couple of questions that came in, both related to the email domain and the inbound emails. So just to, I think, repeat the question so everyone is aware, the email addresses, I know Prasanna's moving quickly and there's a lot of information here, but the email addresses are automatically updated. So we take the old domain and switch to the new domain. The new inboxes exist when you move to the new environment. But if you are redirecting emails. If you have, service desk at, yourcompany.com, and that reroutes to, whatever inbox at sas.ca.com today, you will need to update those redirects. Or if customers know the exact, full, not so pretty email address, you certainly need to communicate to them that change in email address to your users. One of the other questions that came in is will there be any sort of temporary redirect if one of your end users were to click on a link or reply to an email, from the system before the migration was done, what would happen to that email? And so we are working with CA right now to try to do redirects for a temporary period of time, but we don't have exact information on that yet. So that's something that I'll take an action on and make sure we communicate that to customers. The goal is to make it as seamless as possible, and therefore the goal would be to have a redirect, and so we're working on that.
Yeah. So that's on the AD Sync configuration, and then the other important one was the SAML integration, the SSO single sign-on. I think for that, what is required is again, the configuration which are there, single sign-on configuration, it would automatically get moved to get updated to the new environment. What you need to do is import that metadata file into your ADFS system. I think we have outlined the steps there. I think for that, again, first thing what is required is the actual metadata file, which you can download from the system. Currently, what we can do is staging environment. Once the staging environment is available for you for testing, during that time you configure the staging and start testing it. Once you have complete the staging environment, you can change the HTTPS URLs here. I think if you see, there are 3 places we have highlighted that in the documentation too. So you could change that to the staging to the proper URL, the metadata file, and you could directly go to the ADFS in case if you are using ADFS system, and then import that relay. So for example, here you would see have both iDevOps and also my AWS environment, both the systems are running together. I could able to configure them and then keep them ready. And then also, for example, once it goes live, you can do testing. For example, for that, again, there will be a small change would be the URL would be changed. For example, once you go live with the proper CSM, the ServiceAide URL, which you need to use that URL to log in. Let me show you quickly one sample example over here. So I will probably try out with first with the iDevOps environment. So it would allow me to log in from both the systems, but it will not be the case when you go live with the environment. For testing, I just want to show that you can configure both the systems and then redirection can be done. Only thing, the URL which you need to change would be changed. For example, I logged into the iDevOps environment, and then what I will do now is I'll just go to the CSM trial and then use the CSM trial SSO login URL. So it would allow me to directly get into the CSM trial environment. So I just need to import that, the metadata file, which you can probably hardcode or handcode them, and then copy that file, import them to the AWS system, and then you would be able to configure that and then make your environment ready for the migration after the migration. So that's on the ADFS and the SSO single sign-on configuration. Any questions on these two? I can pick it up. The same thing, similarly, we have, in case if you are using Asset Connector, there is, again, here also we have one configuration file, which again needs to be updated with URL change, and the rest of the stuff would automatically gets connected. For example, let me show you. This is the trial environment where we have configured. where the actual migration happened. It moved from the existing environment to this. So you would see there won't be any asset connector over here. So I would just modify that file, the configuration, and then they restart the services. You would find that you would see that connector gets registered automatically to the new system. So let me just go to the item ops. So, and then restart the services. That's a Discovery Manager service. So most of these are single configuration file where we store the URL. So it's not a lot of many places we need to go and modify. It's probably one single place where you modify, and then you would get that connection to the new environment and get it running from there. So that's about the configuration, and then anything else, Rich, you want to cover from this? It's still coming up, the asset discovery one.
Yeah, there's a couple other questions coming. A couple other questions coming through. I'll just mention about where the environments are. So it's a good question. If you're currently hosted in what we call the Americas environment, that environment stays in the U.S. The new environment, you'll either be in CSM1 or CSM3, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. If you're in the Europe environment, which is SM2 today, that becomes CSM2, if I'm doing my mapping right, and that stays in Europe as well. For the few customers that we have in Australia today, which is SM3, they will be moving to the U.S. environment. It's only a small number, and the demand just doesn't match the infrastructure that we'd be required to support them, so we are moving them to the U.S. So in an environment, one of the other questions just came up, an environment that we set up, let's just take CSM1, which is a U.S. environment, that won't be moving outside of the country or anything like that. It stays where we started.
Okay. So as a discovery start running, so you would see them in the CSM trial, the same system got registered. I would also got the other configurations in case if you have any configurations, it would get all those configurations and then the schedule from that system to this one. Currently, I don't have anything. It would get moved without any changes. Once the new asset connector starts working, then it would start running the asset discovery from then onwards. So,
okay. All right, so I will take control back. A couple of the things we want to cover before we just open up for questions. We are staying on the CA support systems, the CA wiki and the CA community during this migration period. We really felt like, again, reducing the risk of change, not doing too many things at once. Let's keep the support experience exactly the same so that we can focus on the migration, you can focus on the migration and not think about where you go for support. So if you have any technical questions, either running up to, in the lead up to your actual, testing migration or the actual production of migration, please reach out to support.ca.com with any of those questions. In April, we will be moving to a new support system. We'll be migrating to, out of the CA support systems actually onto CSM, this product. So you'll be using CSM to open up tickets. The target date is to have that live April 1st. And access it from our website at ServiceAide.com/support. there's a temporary page up there now. You're more than welcome to take a look, but the real rollout will happen in April. The documentation wiki, CA, today we hosted on a product called Confluence. We'll be using that same product on the ServiceAide side. We're testing that migration now, and the target is to have that live on April 1st as well, so it'll be a very similar experience. Again, off of serviceaide.com/support. The community, we are evaluating community platforms now. That is a much bigger change to move just a huge amount of data, and I will say it's a critical priority to make sure that we get that right. The community, I think if you look at different CA communities, CSM may be a small product by CA standards, but it is one of the most active communities, and I certainly see the value of allowing customers to interact, ask questions, raise ideas, vote on those ideas, and a huge percentage of what we do comes from those ideas. So that's very important, and I'll be making sure that we do that change right. So look for separate communications around these systems. As we move through, we want to make sure the migration process is a successful one before we change these systems for customers. So summary before we open up for questions. So the migration program, a couple points here, begins in late January. Notification, you should have received a notification by now. If you did not, please reach out to Ken Laufman, and we'll make sure we have the right contacts to be able to get you the information you need and go through the end of March. Just to highlight the process again, get that notification. You'll have your staging date. A copy of your production environment will be in the new staging environment. On that staging date, you'll have approximately 10 days. There's some have 12, some have 14, just depending on dates and making sure we hit the Saturday migration window of actual production, where you have time to test, raise any questions, do any pre-configuration work, test any post-configuration work, and then go live in production on a Saturday morning. We'll also be having migration office hours. We'll be posting those on the community as events. The target is every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m., essentially from starting next week and going through the end of March to make sure if you do have any questions or concerns or confused about something, you can raise those issues and we'll happily help you out. And then any technical issues you have or technical questions, if you don't remember how to configure Active Directory sync or something like that, feel free to reach out to support team at support.ca.com. Okay, so we'll open up for questions now. If you do have an audio question, feel free to hit #6 or #6 on your phone and raise any questions. We do have a couple more questions coming in on the Q&A feature, and we'll take a look. One question came in on chat. Will the data center move outside the UK? So on the European data center, currently the European data center is hosted in Munich, Germany. I don't remember off the top of my head. I know we're keeping it in Europe. Prasanna, do you know the new location of our European data center?
No, somewhere in Europe.
Okay, I'll have to look. I don't remember the exact location, but we can get that to you. So I will follow up with Klaus on that one. Okay. Any other audio questions? And we'll keep watching the Q&A questions here. Okay. So a lot of questions on email that came in on Q&A. See if anything new comes in. And again, any audio questions, you can hit #6 or #6 on your phone to ask a question. Okay. A few other things to mention. This presentation is being recorded. I will post it to the community. It usually takes us about 48 hours to get the recording uploaded to YouTube and then post it. So within 48 hours, we'll have that up and live on the community site, as well as this presentation deck, so you can use it as a reference point. The migration checklist that we talked about is live on the wiki right now. You should also have it in your email, but it's live on the wiki. So if you go to reference, which is in the last sort of topic on the left-hand side of the navigation sort of table of contents, there'll be an article on ServiceAide Cloud migration, so you can find that and be able to answer questions there. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. There's a few other on chat that I'm answering. Why don't we go ahead and at this point we can end the webcast. Prasanna and I will stick around for the next 5 or 6 minutes, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them on Q&A, and we'll address those. But we can go ahead and stop the recording, stop the webcast, and you can have a few minutes to run to your next meeting. But please do, I'll put up one more time. Again, if you didn't receive a notification email and you're confused on when your dates are or just have questions about your dates, please don't hesitate to email Ken Laughlin, whose email address is here. And again, this will be put up on the community site here shortly. And look for office hours meeting invites on the community starting next week.
Hi,
yes.
Rich. This is Mariana from SoftChoice. Just my question is, all these changes, all the migration only will be affected by the migration from one URL to another. It's not that we will have any configuration to do other than the email and single sign-on if we have. Like, whatever configuration we have for profiles and things, that won't be changed, right?
Correct. Like if you're, so, you know, there's these 10 items that are impacted by the URL change. If you're only using, you know, 2 or 3, those are the only things that you need to focus on. But But usernames, passwords, user profiles, user security permissions, all of that is exactly the same. And that's a very good question. Usernames and passwords do not change at all, so it's the same.
I will log in my new URL, and everything will be okay. Like my same profile, so people, they don't really, agents that create tickets and things, they won't see any change.
You're correct. Your agents, your end users, you know, once they know where to go, they won't see any change. You're correct.
Okay, that's good. So yeah, it's a few changes that we have to do in the back end, but the rest is okay.
Correct. Yeah, very good question.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And one other question that came in on the Q&A, is there any changes to licenses? No, there's no changes to licenses. If a user was a fixed or named user at the previous, you know, URL, they're a fixed or named user and the new URL. There's no changes or impact on licensing. Everything from that perspective is exactly the same. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and stop the recording. Again, Prasanna and I will stick around if you have questions on the phone, if you have questions on WebEx Q&A, we'll certainly stick around to answer those. But thanks everyone for attending, and please do reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you.